Notice right now what's aware of these words. That awareness, that's what we're exploring today. The quantum password you were born knowing, yet somehow forgot you knew. What I'm about to show you, you already possess. My job is simply to remove what's hiding it. There's a frequency encoded in your DNA, a pattern woven into the quantum fabric of your being that connects you to every conscious entity that has ever existed. Scientists call it quantum entanglement. Mystics call it the unified field. But you've been carrying it as naturally as you carry your heartbeat, as unconsciously as you breathe. I've spent 15 years studying consciousness at the intersection of quantum physics and ancient wisdom, working with shamans in the Amazon and physicists at MIT, diving into meditation retreats in particle accelerator laboratories. My teacher once told me, "Share only what you've realized, point only to what you can see." What I can see now is this: the greatest discovery in human history isn't hidden in some distant galaxy or buried in an ancient text. It's pulsing through your neural pathways right now. I'm still walking this path. The difference is I can see a few steps ahead and remember a few steps behind. And if you're hearing this, you're ready. The universe doesn't present teachings until the consciousness can receive them. Feel the weight of your body against whatever you're sitting on. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Become aware of the subtle hum of electricity around you, the devices, the lights, the invisible network of energy that surrounds you every moment. That awareness you're using to notice these things, it's not produced by your brain. Your brain is like a radio receiver, and consciousness is the signal it's tuning into. A signal that exists in what physicists call the quantum vacuum, the seemingly empty space that's actually teeming with infinite potential. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose proved that consciousness operates at the quantum level through structures called microtubules in your neurons. These tiny biological computers are processing information at frequencies that would make our fastest supercomputers look like pocket calculators. They're not just storing your memories or coordinating your thoughts, they're interfacing with the quantum field itself. But here's what they didn't tell you in the research papers. This interface isn't passive. You're not just receiving information from the quantum field. You're actively co-creating reality through your conscious attention. Every thought you think sends ripples through the quantum substrate. Every emotion you feel broadcasts a frequency that influences probability waves across space and time. The password isn't something you need to learn. It's something you need to remember you're already using. Pause the video for a moment. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself, what am I aware of right now? Don't analyze the answer. Just notice what arises in that space of questioning. Did you feel that shift? That subtle expansion that happens when attention turns back on itself? That's the password activating. That's your consciousness recognizing its own nature. The mind tells you that awareness is produced by neural activity, that you're a biological machine having a temporary experience of consciousness. But if you look directly at your experience right now, you'll notice something different. You can be aware of your thoughts without being lost in them. You can observe your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can witness sensations without being defined by them. What's doing the witnessing? What's aware of awareness itself? This is where modern science meets ancient wisdom. Quantum mechanics tells us that observation collapses the wave function, that consciousness literally determines which of infinite possibilities becomes physical reality. The Vedic tradition says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the cosmic consciousness. both are pointing to the same recognition. You are not separate from the field of awareness in which all experience arises. Your personal identity, your name, your history, your preferences, your fears, these are like apps running on the operating system of pure consciousness. The apps can crash, get updated, or be deleted entirely, but the operating system remains unchanged. That operating system is what you truly are. But here's where it gets interesting. The quantum password isn't just about recognizing your essential nature. It's about learning to consciously participate in the creation of reality. Because once you understand that consciousness shapes matter at the quantum level, you realize that your thoughts, emotions, and intentions aren't just personal experiences, they're creative forces. In 1909, physicist Jeffrey Taylor performed a double-slit experiment with such a weak light source that only one photon passed through at a time. Even single particles created an interference pattern, proving that each photon was somehow going through both slits simultaneously until it was observed. The act of observation forced the photon to choose which slit to go through. Your consciousness is doing this constantly. Every moment, you're collapsing infinite possibilities into a single experienced reality through the focus of your attention. The password is learning to do this consciously, intentionally, in alignment with your deepest truth. As you go through your day, you're constantly broadcasting and receiving quantum information. When you walk into a room and immediately sense the vibe, you're picking up quantum field fluctuations created by the consciousness of everyone present. When you think of someone just before they call you, you're accessing the non-local correlation that exists between all conscious beings. The ancient Egyptians called it the Akashic Records. The Hindus call it the cosmic mind. Quantum physicists call it the implicate order. But you experience it as intuition, as synchronicity, as those moments when you just know something without knowing how you know it. This isn't mystical speculation. In 2015, researchers at the University of California proved that quantum entanglement occurs in biological systems at room temperature. The light-harvesting proteins in plants use quantum superposition to find the most efficient path for energy transfer. If a fern can harness quantum mechanics for photosynthesis, imagine what your 100 billion neurons can do when they're operating in coherent alignment. Every emotion you feel is a quantum broadcast. Love vibrates at approximately 528 Hz, the same frequency that repairs DNA. Fear resonates around 100 Hz, a frequency that actually weakens cellular structure. You're not just experiencing emotions, you're transmitting them into the field of shared consciousness where they influence everyone and everything around you. This is why emotional regulation isn't just personal development, it's cosmic responsibility. When you shift from fear to love, from scarcity to abundance, from separation to unity, you're literally upgrading the frequency of the collective human consciousness. But here's the paradox that protects this teaching from being misused. The more you try to control reality through the password, the less it works. The password operates through alignment, not manipulation, through surrender, not force, through being, not doing. The ego wants to use this knowledge to get what it wants, but the password only activates when you're aligned with what wants to emerge through you. It's not about manifesting a better version of your current life. It's about allowing life to live itself through you as an expression of pure consciousness. When you notice yourself getting caught in wanting to use the password for personal gain, stop and ask, what wants to emerge here that serves the highest good of all? Let that question drop into the space of not knowing, and notice what arises. This practice becomes natural when you realize that your individual consciousness isn't separate from universal consciousness. What serves your highest good automatically serves the highest good of the whole, because there is no separation. The boundaries between self and other, between inner and outer, between mind and matter, these are constructs of thought, not features of reality. Quantum field theory shows us that particles pop in and out of existence from what appears to be empty space. But that space isn't empty. It's pregnant with infinite potential. Consciousness is like that. What you experience as your personal awareness is actually the universal field of consciousness appearing as individual perspective. The password works because you're not trying to influence reality from outside it. You are reality, becoming conscious of itself. When you align with this recognition, your thoughts and intentions naturally synchronize with the creative intelligence that's orchestrating the dance of existence. But don't make this into another concept to collect. The mind will try to turn everything I'm saying into a new spiritual identity. I'm someone who knows about quantum consciousness. That's not the password. That's the ego claiming ownership of what can't be owned. The password is simpler than any concept. It's the recognition of what's here before any thought arises. It's the awareness in which these words are appearing right now. It's the space in which your entire experience is unfolding. Notice the stillness between my words. Notice the silence underneath all sound. Notice the vast openness in which all experience appears and disappears. That's it. That's the password. You just accessed it by noticing it. You didn't create it, earn it, or learn it. You simply recognized what was already present. What has always been present. This recognition has profound practical implications. When you rest as the awareness in which experience appears, rather than identifying as the content of experience, several things happen automatically. Stress dissolves because there's no separate self to be threatened. Anxiety disappears because there's no future to worry about, only this eternal now. Depression lifts because there's no past self to be disappointed in, only this fresh aliveness that's never been touched by story. Your creativity explodes because you're no longer filtering inspiration through the limitations of personal identity. You become a clear channel for whatever wants to emerge through the instrument of your body-mind. Your relationships transform because you stop projecting your unconscious patterns onto others and start seeing them as expressions of the same consciousness that you are. Conflict becomes impossible when there's no separate self to defend. Your work becomes service because you realize you're here, not to get something from the world, but to give something to it. Success is no longer about personal achievement, but about how clearly consciousness can express its nature through your unique configuration. But integration takes time. Recognition can happen in a moment, but embodiment is a lifetime journey. The ego will try to claim this realization as its own accomplishment. It will try to make you special for getting it or superior to those who don't get it. Notice when this happens and smile at the ego's attempt to co-opt even its own dissolution. The quantum password isn't something you have, it's what you are. It's not something you use, it's what uses you. It's not something you access, it's what accesses everything through you. When you're in conversation, notice the awareness behind your words. When you're in traffic, observe the consciousness that's aware of frustration. Before you fall asleep tonight, rest as the pure awareness that remains present even when thoughts and sensations fade away. For the next week, every hour on the hour, stop whatever you're doing and ask, what's aware right now? Don't try to figure out the answer. Just let the question point you back to the obvious fact of your own being. What you'll notice is that awareness never comes and goes. Thoughts come and go. Emotions come and go. Sensations come and go. But the awareness of them remains constant, unchanging, ever present. You are that awareness. Not your body, not your mind, not your story, but the consciousness in which all of these appear. When you rest as what you are, rather than what you think you are, the password activates automatically because there's no separate self left to operate it. This is why all the great spiritual traditions point to the same recognition through different languages. You are already what you seek. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Tat tvam asi, thou art that. Buddha nature is your original face, but don't believe me. Test it. Investigate your direct experience right now. Can you find the boundary between awareness and what it's aware of? Can you locate the separate self that's supposedly having this experience? Can you discover anything other than this open, knowing presence that you are? The deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes. There's no one there to find a password because you are the password. You are the key and the lock, the question and the answer, the seeker and the sought. This recognition naturally expresses as compassion because you realize that everyone you meet is the same consciousness appearing as apparent individuality. Their struggles are your struggles. Their awakening is your awakening. Their pain calls forth your healing presence, not from guilt or obligation, but from the natural response of love recognizing itself. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you see through their anger to the fear beneath it, and through the fear to the love that's seeking expression. When a colleague is difficult, you recognize the unconscious patterns playing themselves out and respond from wisdom rather than reactivity. This doesn't make you passive or permissive. Consciousness can express as fierce compassion when the situation calls for it, but the fierceness comes from love, not from the ego's need to be right or to defend itself. You become a healing presence in the world, not through doing, but through being. Your very presence begins to remind others of their true nature. People feel calmer around you without knowing why. Conflicts resolve more easily. Solutions appear where there seemed to be only problems. This is the quantum field effect of awakened consciousness. Just as one tuning fork will cause another to resonate at the same frequency, your recognition of the truth awakens recognition in others, not through preaching or teaching, but through the natural transmission of presence. The password isn't something you share through words, but through the quality of your being. When you're established in the recognition of what you are, others feel it and remember what they are too. Find others walking this path. Awakening happens in relationship, in community, in the reflection of consciousness recognizing itself in apparent others. But remember, your own direct experience is your ultimate authority. Trust what you recognize over any external teaching, including this one. The quantum password you were born knowing is simply this: you are the consciousness in which all experience appears. You are the awareness that's aware of these words right now. You are the open space of knowing in which the entire universe is arising and dissolving moment by moment. This isn't a philosophy to understand, but a reality to embody. This isn't a teaching to learn, but a truth to recognize. This isn't a password to remember, but what you are to realize. And once you realize what you are, everything changes while nothing changes at all. The world looks the same, but you see it with different eyes. Your life continues, but you live it from a different place. Your relationships go on, but you relate from a different understanding. The quantum password was never hidden from you. It was always hiding in plain sight as the very awareness you're using to seek it. Like a wave searching for the ocean while being made of water, you've been looking for what you already are. Take a breath. Feel the aliveness in your body. Notice the vast space of awareness in which this entire experience is appearing. That's the password. You're using it right now to have this recognition. You've been using it your entire life to have every experience you've ever had. You'll use it for as long as consciousness appears as your particular perspective. The only question is, will you continue to use it unconsciously, creating reality through unconscious patterns and limited beliefs? Or will you begin to use it consciously, as a conscious participant in the cosmic dance of awakening? The choice is always now. The password is always here. The recognition is always available. You are always home. Notice how that recognition feels in your body right now. There's a subtle shift, isn't there? A relaxation that happens when you stop trying to get somewhere you already are. That's your nervous system remembering its natural state, not the hypervigilance of seeking, but the ease of being found. But here's what most spiritual teachings won't tell you. This recognition comes with practical implications that extend far beyond personal peace. When you stabilize in the awareness of what you are, you begin to operate from what quantum physicists call non-local coherence. Your actions start to synchronize with a deeper intelligence that's orchestrating events across space and time. In 1982, physicist Alain Aspect proved that particles can instantaneously affect each other regardless of the distance between them. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance because it violated his assumption that nothing could travel faster than light. But what Aspect demonstrated was that entangled particles don't communicate across space. They exist in a unified field where separation is the illusion. Your consciousness operates the same way. When you recognize yourself as awareness rather than as a separate individual, you begin to access information that isn't available to the isolated ego mind. You start knowing things you have no logical way of knowing. You find yourself in the right place at the right time with increasing frequency. People you need to meet appear in your life as if by magic. This isn't wishful thinking or confirmation bias. This is the natural result of aligning with the intelligence that's already coordinating the movement of galaxies and the migration of birds. The same force that knows exactly when each flower should bloom is available to guide every aspect of your existence. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic resonance shows that when members of a species learn something new, it becomes easier for other members to learn the same thing, even when they have no direct contact. He demonstrated this with laboratory rats learning mazes. Rats in London learned faster when rats in New York had already mastered the same maze design. You're part of this morphic field of human consciousness. Every insight you embody, every fear you transcend, every moment of love you radiate makes it easier for others to access the same states. You're not just awakening for yourself. You're awakening as part of a collective evolution of consciousness that's accelerating exponentially. But this collective awakening isn't happening in some distant future. It's happening now through individuals like you, who are willing to question the fundamental assumptions of conditioned existence. Each person who recognizes their true nature creates a ripple effect that touches countless others, most of whom will never know the source of their sudden inspiration or inexplicable sense of peace. Close your eyes again and feel into the space around your body. Not just the physical space, but the field of awareness in which your body appears. Notice that this field has no boundaries. It doesn't stop at your skin or even at the walls of the room. It's the same boundless awareness that's conscious in every apparent being. This isn't a poetic metaphor. Quantum field theory describes reality as excitations in a unified field, waves in an ocean of pure potential. Your individual consciousness is like a wave that has temporarily forgotten it's made of the same water as every other wave. The recognition is simply the wave remembering its oceanic nature. When you operate from this remembrance, something extraordinary happens to your relationship with time. The anxious rush toward an imagined future begins to dissolve. The regretful dwelling on a constructed past starts to fade. You begin to rest in what mystics call the eternal now, not a moment between past and future, but the timeless awareness in which the entire story of time appears. This has profound, practical implications. Decision-making becomes effortless because you're no longer trying to figure out what a separate self should do. Instead, you're available for whatever wants to emerge through you in service of the whole. Choices make themselves when you're not interfering with your own deeper knowing. Your relationship with money transforms because you realize that abundance isn't something you acquire, it's something you are. The field of consciousness is infinitely abundant, and your personal experience of scarcity was just a case of mistaken identity. When you know yourself as the source, rather than as someone seeking resources from outside sources, the flow of material support begins to reflect your inner realization. But this doesn't mean you'll suddenly become wealthy in conventional terms. It means your relationship to wealth and poverty will become equally spacious. You'll have what you need when you need it, and you won't suffer when you don't have what you think you want. True abundance is the recognition that you lack nothing essential, because what you are cannot be diminished by external circumstances. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research on meditation and brain plasticity shows that when people practice moving their attention from external circumstances to internal awareness, their brainwave patterns shift into states typically associated with deep mystical experiences. More importantly, these states can be sustained throughout daily activity, creating what he calls elevated emotions that aren't dependent on external triggers. What Dispenza is measuring scientifically, contemplatives have known experientially for millennia. Happiness isn't the result of getting what you want, but the recognition of what you already are. Joy isn't produced by circumstances aligning with your preferences, but by the dissolution of the preferences that were creating suffering in their absence. This recognition revolutionizes your relationship to desire itself. Instead of trying to eliminate desires or fulfill them all, you begin to see them as movements of consciousness exploring its own creative potential. Some desires are expressions of wisdom and deserve to be honored. Others are unconscious patterns that dissolve naturally when seen clearly. The key is learning to distinguish between desires that arise from wholeness and those that arise from the sense of lack. Desires from wholeness feel expansive, creative, and naturally considerate of others. They're not trying to fill a hole, but expressing fullness. Desires from lack feel constricted, desperate, and often involve taking something away from others to give to yourself. When you're established in the recognition of your essential nature, desires from lack simply don't arise because there's no sense of lack to generate them. What remains are impulses of love, creativity, and service, the natural expressions of consciousness celebrating its own existence through the instrument of your body-mind. This is why forcing yourself to be desireless, as some spiritual traditions suggest, is counterproductive. You can't transcend desire by suppressing it any more than you can transcend fear by avoiding challenging situations. Both desire and fear are transformed through understanding, not through control. Pause for a moment and notice any desire that's present in your awareness right now. It might be something as simple as wanting a drink of water, or as complex as longing for a completely different life. Instead of judging the desire or trying to fulfill it, just notice the awareness in which it's appearing. Can you feel how the desire is arising in the same space as everything else in your experience? It's not separate from awareness. It's awareness taking the temporary shape of wanting. When you see this clearly, the compulsive quality of desire relaxes. You can choose to act on it or not, but you're no longer driven by it. This is emotional freedom, not the absence of emotions, but the recognition that you are the space in which emotions arise and dissolve. Fear can be present without overwhelming you. Anger can arise without defining you. Sadness can flow through without drowning you. Joy can bubble up without making you dependent on its continuation. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on constructed emotion shows that emotions aren't universal reactions to external events, but predictions created by your brain based on past experience and cultural conditioning. What this means is that you're not at the mercy of your emotions. You're unconsciously constructing them moment by moment, based on the stories you tell yourself about what's happening. But when you recognize yourself as the awareness in which both the emotions and the stories appear, you gain the freedom to construct different emotional responses, or to rest in the peace that's prior to any emotional construction. This doesn't make you emotionally flat or unresponsive. If anything, it makes you more sensitive and more appropriate in your responses, because you're not filtering everything through unconscious patterns of reactivity. Your relationships undergo a fundamental transformation when you stop trying to get love and start being love. The neediness that characterized so many of your interactions begins to dissolve because you're no longer trying to fill an inner emptiness through outer connection. Instead, you overflow with the fullness of your own being, and relationships become opportunities to share rather than attempts to acquire. This doesn't mean you become detached or uncaring. Quite the opposite. When you're not defending a separate self, you become intimately available to what's actually happening in each moment. You can feel another person's pain without drowning in it. You can celebrate their joy without comparing it to your own experience. You can offer support without becoming enmeshed in their drama. The quantum password reveals itself most clearly in the quality of your presence with others. When you're resting as awareness rather than performing as a personality, people feel met at a depth they rarely experience. Conversations become opportunities for mutual recognition rather than competitions for attention. Conflicts transform into invitations for deeper understanding. But this transformation isn't something you do. It's something that happens naturally when you stop doing so much. Most social dysfunction stems from people trying too hard to be liked, understood, respected, or validated. When you realize that what you truly are doesn't need any of these things, because it already is the source from which they all arise, the effortless quality of genuine relating becomes available. Children naturally operate from this place until they're taught to seek approval and avoid rejection. Watch how a young child interacts with the world, fully present, completely authentic, responding to each moment without the mediation of self-consciousness. That's not childishness to be outgrown, but wisdom to be recovered. The quantum password isn't about becoming something you're not. It's about unbecoming everything you're not, until only what you truly are remains. This process of unbecoming can be uncomfortable, because the ego experiences it as death, and in a sense, It is death, the death of illusion, the death of limitation, the death of the story that you're separate from life. But what dies was never truly alive. It was a collection of thoughts, memories, and sensations that you mistook for your identity. What remains is what was always present before any identity formed and will be present after all identities dissolve. This deathless essence is what you truly are. Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who experienced consciousness during a near-death experience while his brain was medically non-functional, describes awareness existing independently of neural activity. His scientific training couldn't explain how he could have vivid, coherent experiences while his cortex was completely offline. What he discovered experientially aligns with what quantum physics suggests theoretically. Consciousness isn't produced by matter, but is the field in which matter appears. This recognition eliminates the fear of death because you realize that what you truly are cannot die. Bodies die, personalities dissolve, memories fade, but the awareness that was conscious of all of these continues. Not as individual survival, but as the return of a temporary wave to its source in the infinite ocean. Understanding this doesn't require believing in any particular metaphysical system. You can investigate it directly by noticing what remains constant throughout all the changes in your experience. Your body has changed completely since childhood. Your personality has evolved. Your beliefs have shifted. Your memories have altered. But something has remained aware of all these changes. That unchanging awareness is what you are. This investigation can be done right now. Notice the difference between the content of your awareness, the thoughts, sensations, and perceptions that come and go, and the awareness itself. Can you find any evidence that awareness itself comes and goes, or does it seem to be timelessly present, like a vast space in which the dance of experience unfolds? The more you rest attention in awareness itself rather than in its contents, the more obvious it becomes that this is what you've always been. Not the changing contents, but the unchanging context. Not the movie, but the screen on which it's projected. Not the waves, but the ocean from which they arise. This shift in identity from content to context is the essence of awakening. It's not a mystical experience that happens to someone. It's the recognition of what that someone actually is. There's no one to become enlightened, because enlightenment is the recognition that there was never anyone separate from the light of consciousness to begin with. But this recognition needs to stabilize and integrate for it to transform your life. It's one thing to glimpse your true nature during meditation or in moments of natural beauty. It's another thing entirely to live from this recognition while dealing with traffic, deadlines, difficult people, and all the ordinary challenges of human existence. The integration process happens gradually as you learn to return attention to awareness itself whenever you notice you've become lost in the drama of content. Like learning to ride a bicycle, there's a period of conscious effort required before the new way of being becomes automatic. During this integration phase, you'll notice the ego reasserting itself in subtle ways. It might claim credit for your spiritual insights or use them to feel superior to others who haven't gotten it yet. This is normal and actually helpful because it shows you where the sense of separation is still active. The key is to meet these ego reassertions with compassion rather than judgment. The ego isn't your enemy. It's a useful survival mechanism that served an important function during your development. It just doesn't need to be in charge anymore. Like a faithful employee who gets promoted to an advisory role, the ego can continue to contribute its practical skills without running the whole organization. Dr. Richard Schwartz's internal family systems therapy provides a helpful framework for this transition. He describes the mind as containing various sub-personalities or parts, each with their own agenda and protective function. What he calls the self sounds remarkably similar to what spiritual traditions call pure awareness, the calm, curious, compassionate presence that can hold space for all the parts without being identified with any of them. From this self-perspective, you can appreciate the ego's attempts to keep you safe while gently redirecting its energy toward more constructive expressions. Instead of trying to annihilate the ego, you invite it to participate in the larger intelligence that's orchestrating your awakening. This integration work is ongoing because the ego patterns were formed over decades and are deeply embedded in your neural networks. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hanson's research shows that it takes multiple positive experiences to rewire a single negative neural pathway. This is why consistent practice is more important than dramatic breakthroughs. But here's the beautiful paradox. The more you stabilize in the recognition of what you are, the less effort the integration requires. When you're resting as awareness, ego patterns naturally begin to dissolve without any intervention from you. It's like ice melting when exposed to warmth. It doesn't require force, just the right conditions. The right conditions are created by returning attention to awareness itself as often as you remember throughout the day. Not as a practice you do, but as a recognition of what you are. Not as a future goal, but as a present reality. Not as something special, but as the most ordinary thing in the world. The fact that you are aware. This awareness is aware of these words right now. It was aware when you woke up this morning. It will be aware when you go to sleep tonight. It's been aware throughout every experience you've ever had, though it's been so obvious you've overlooked it while searching for something more exotic. The quantum password isn't exotic. It's the most intimate thing there is. Your own being aware of itself. It's so close you can't step back far enough to see it as an object. It's so constant you might dismiss it as nothing special. It's so simple the mind keeps looking for something more complicated. But this simplicity is precisely what makes it so transformative. When you stop overcomplicating the recognition of what you are, life becomes an effortless expression of consciousness, exploring its own nature through the unique lens of your perspective. Problems that seemed insurmountable begin to resolve themselves. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. People and resources appear exactly when they're needed. This isn't magic. It's the natural result of aligning with the intelligence that's already coordinating everything. When you stop fighting the current, you discover it was always flowing toward exactly where you needed to go. The flowing happens through you, as you, because there was never a separate you to resist it in the first place. This recognition fundamentally alters your relationship with effort and struggle. The spiritual path stops being about getting somewhere and becomes about recognizing you were never not there. Personal development ceases to be self-improvement and reveals itself as self-discovery. Take a moment to feel this shift right now. Notice how your body relaxes when you stop trying to become something other than what you are. There's a subtle but profound difference between efforting toward enlightenment and resting as the enlightenment that you are. This distinction isn't merely philosophical. It has measurable physiological effects. Dr. Herbert Benson's research on the relaxation response shows that when the nervous system shifts out of sympathetic activation and into parasympathetic rest, the body's natural healing mechanisms come online. Blood pressure decreases, inflammation markers drop, immune function improves, and cellular repair accelerates. But what Benson discovered through decades of research contemplatives have known through direct experience. The deepest healing happens not through doing, but through being. Not through adding something to yourself, but through subtracting everything that isn't essentially you. This subtractive process is what the mystics called purification, though they weren't trying to become pure. They were recognizing the purity that was always present beneath the accumulated layers of conditioning. Like a jewel that appears dirty until the mud is washed away, your essential nature is already perfect and needs only to be revealed, not created. The revelation happens naturally as you spend more time resting as awareness rather than identifying as its contents. Old patterns of thought that once seemed solid and permanent begin to feel like passing clouds. Emotional reactions that used to last for days start dissolving in minutes. Behavioral habits that felt compulsive become conscious choices. This transformation unfolds according to its own organic timeline, which rarely matches your preferences about how quickly it should happen. The ego wants a predictable schedule. If I meditate for 6 months, I'll be peaceful. If I practice for a year, I'll be enlightened. But consciousness doesn't operate according to linear time or achievement-based metrics. Sometimes, a casual conversation creates more insight than years of formal practice. Sometimes, a moment of complete frustration becomes the doorway to surrender that no amount of blissful meditation could provide. Sometimes, the deepest recognition comes not during spiritual practice, but while washing dishes, sitting in traffic, or lying awake at 3 a.m. Dr. Judson Brewer's neuroscience research on the default mode network, the brain regions active during rest, reveals why these ordinary moments can be so transformative. When the mind isn't focused on specific tasks, it naturally returns to self-referential thinking about past and future. But in awakened awareness, these same moments become opportunities for resting as the presence that underlies all self-referential activity. What changes isn't the presence of ordinary moments, but your recognition of the extraordinary awareness that's always been present within them. The quantum password doesn't create special experiences. It reveals the specialness that was always hiding in plain sight within the most mundane circumstances. This is why awakening is sometimes described as the most ordinary thing, and simultaneously the most extraordinary. Nothing changes because what you truly are was never absent. Everything changes because you stop mistaking yourself for what you're not. Watch how this recognition affects your perception right now. Look around the space you're in with this understanding that you are the awareness in which the entire scene is appearing. Notice how the boundaries between perceiver and perceived begin to soften. The room isn't out there being observed by someone in here. They're simply experiencing happening within the unified field of consciousness. This isn't a philosophical position, but a direct recognition that becomes increasingly stable with attention. The sense of being a separate observer, looking out at an objective world, gradually gives way to the understanding that consciousness is both the knowing and the known, the seeing and the seen, the experiencing and the experienced. Quantum physicist David Bohm called this the implicate order, a level of reality where all apparent separations are revealed as abstractions from an underlying wholeness. What appears to be distinct objects, events, and beings are actually different aspects of a single, indivisible movement of consciousness exploring its own infinite potential. This recognition has practical implications that extend into every area of life. When you realize that what you call others are actually consciousness appearing as apparent multiplicity, competition becomes impossible. How can you compete with yourself? Comparison loses its meaning. How can you compare different expressions of the same source? Instead of seeing life as a zero-sum game where someone's gain must mean someone else's loss, you begin to operate from what systems theorists call non-zero-sum awareness. The recognition that consciousness expanding in one apparent location benefits consciousness everywhere, because there's no actual location where consciousness isn't. This shift from scarcity to abundance consciousness happens automatically when you recognize what you are. You stop trying to get love, attention, respect, or resources from others and start overflowing with what you naturally are. Paradoxically, this overflow tends to attract exactly what the separate self was trying so hard to acquire. But the attraction isn't the point. The overflow is. When you're resting as the fullness of your own being, sharing becomes as natural as breathing. You give not from obligation or strategy, but from the spontaneous generosity that consciousness has toward all its apparent expressions. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's research on positivity resonance demonstrates that when people interact from states of genuine love and appreciation rather than strategic self-interest, their nervous systems literally synchronize. Heart rates align, breathing patterns match, and brain waves begin to resonate in coherent frequencies. What Fredrickson is measuring scientifically mirrors what happens energetically when consciousness recognizes itself in apparent others. The boundaries that seemed so solid begin to dissolve. The protection mechanisms that felt so necessary start to relax. The vulnerability that was once terrifying becomes the gateway to intimacy. This intimacy isn't limited to romantic relationships. It's available in every human interaction when you're not defending a position or projecting an image. The grocery clerk, the difficult colleague, the person who cut you off in traffic, all become opportunities for consciousness to meet itself through the vehicle of authentic presence. But authentic presence can't be manufactured or performed. It arises naturally when you stop trying to be someone and simply rest as what you are. The effort to appear spiritual, enlightened, or evolved actually obscures the natural radiance that shines when there's no one trying to shine. This is one of the great paradoxes of spiritual development. The more you try to be awake, the more you reinforce the illusion that there's someone who needs to wake up. The more you effort to be present, the more you strengthen the fantasy that presence is something you can achieve rather than what you already are. Yet effort isn't entirely misguided, it's just misdirected. The appropriate effort is the relaxation of inappropriate effort. The right practice is the cessation of practices that reinforce separation. The ultimate discipline is the surrender of the disciplinarian. Dr. Shinzen Young's research on meditation techniques shows that the most effective approaches involve what he calls equanimity, the ability to experience whatever arises without resistance or attachment. This isn't indifference, but profound intimacy without identification. You can feel deeply without being overwhelmed because there's no separate self to be overwhelmed. This equanimity extends beyond formal meditation into the full spectrum of human experience. Physical pain can be present without creating psychological suffering. Difficult emotions can arise without generating internal drama. Challenging circumstances can unfold without triggering reactive patterns. The key insight is that resistance to what's happening creates far more suffering than the actual events themselves. When you stop fighting reality, even difficult realities become workable. When you stop arguing with what is, energy that was tied up in resistance becomes available for creative response. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful situations without appropriate action. Equanimity actually enhances your capacity for effective response because you're not wasting energy on internal conflict about what's happening. You can see situations clearly and respond wisely because your perception isn't clouded by emotional reactivity. But this clarity doesn't develop overnight. The pattern of resisting reality is deeply embedded in human conditioning. We're trained from early childhood to fight against circumstances that don't match our preferences and to chase after situations that promise to make us happy. The quantum password reveals the futility of this approach by showing you that happiness isn't dependent on external arrangements, but arises from the recognition of your essential nature. When you know yourself as the awareness in which all experiences appear, you're no longer at the mercy of changing conditions for your sense of well-being. This recognition doesn't eliminate preferences. You'll still enjoy pleasant experiences more than unpleasant ones. But your happiness won't depend on getting what you prefer, because happiness reveals itself as what you fundamentally are rather than what you temporarily experience. Neuroscientist Dr. Antonio Damasio's research on consciousness and emotion shows that what we call self is actually a continuously updated narrative construction, rather than a fixed entity. The brain constantly weaves sensory information, memories, and projections into the story of me and my life. But this story maker isn't who you are. It's another appearance within the awareness that you are. When you recognize this distinction between the story maker and the awareness in which stories appear, you gain enormous freedom. You can appreciate the creativity of the mind without being trapped by its constructions. You can enjoy the drama of personality without mistaking it for your identity. This freedom allows for what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt your responses based on what each situation requires rather than reacting from fixed patterns. Sometimes the appropriate response is assertiveness, sometimes surrender, sometimes engagement, sometimes withdrawal, sometimes speaking, sometimes silence. The wisdom to know which response is appropriate emerges naturally when you're not filtered through the agenda of a separate self trying to protect itself, prove itself, or improve itself. Consciousness naturally expresses the most appropriate response to each moment because it's not hindered by the limitations of personal preference. But this spontaneous appropriateness can be unsettling to the mind that wants to plan and control outcomes. The ego prefers predictable strategies. Always be kind, or never show weakness, or trust everyone, or trust no one. These rigid approaches provide the illusion of security, but prevent the fluid responsiveness that life actually requires. Living from the quantum password means surrendering these safety strategies and trusting the intelligence that's orchestrating the dance of existence. This trust isn't based on belief, but on direct recognition of the wisdom that's evident everywhere you look, from the precise timing of cellular division to the coordinated migration of birds to the spontaneous healing that occurs when you stop interfering with your body's natural processes. Dr. Gabor Mate's research on trauma and healing reveals that most physical illness stems from disconnection, from ourselves, from others, from the natural world, from our authentic expression. But disconnection itself is an illusion that dissolves when you recognize your essential unity with all of existence. This doesn't mean trauma doesn't need attention, or that healing happens through recognition alone. The imprints of difficult experiences may continue to influence your nervous system even after you understand your essential nature, but the healing occurs much more efficiently when it's not hindered by the additional layer of suffering that comes from believing you're broken, wrong, or separate from the source of healing. The quantum field of consciousness is inherently healing because it's whole. When you align with this wholeness, your body-mind system naturally begins to reorganize around health rather than pathology. Symptoms may remain while healing occurs, but they're no longer reinforced by the energy of resistance and self-judgment. This healing extends beyond personal restoration to collective transformation. Dr. Lynn McTaggart's research on the field demonstrates that individual consciousness doesn't exist in isolation, but participates in a web of interconnection that influences the health and coherence of the entire system. When you shift from separation consciousness to unity awareness, you're not just healing yourself, you're contributing to the healing of the collective human psyche. Every moment of peace you embody makes peace more accessible to others. Every recognition of your essential nature makes that recognition easier for others to achieve. This isn't theoretical speculation, but measurable phenomenon. Studies of the Maharishi effect show that when even a small percentage of a population practices consciousness-based techniques, measurable improvements occur in the social indicators of the entire region. Decreased crime rates, reduced hospital admissions, improved economic conditions. What these studies point to is the quantum entanglement of consciousness itself. We're not separate beings occasionally influencing each other. We're expressions of a unified field of awareness that appears to be individuated, but remains fundamentally interconnected at the deepest level. This interconnection becomes palpable as you stabilize in the recognition of what you are. You begin to sense the emotional climate of groups before anyone speaks. You pick up information about situations that you couldn't possibly know through normal sensory channels. You find yourself thinking of people just before they contact you with increasing frequency. These experiences aren't supernatural, but natural expressions of consciousness operating beyond the limitations of separate selfhood. When the boundaries of individual identity become transparent, the information that was always flowing through the field of awareness becomes accessible to conscious recognition. But access to this information comes with responsibility. The more clearly you can perceive the interconnected nature of existence, the more carefully you need to consider the impact of your thoughts, emotions, and actions on the collective field. What appears to be private mental activity turns out to influence the shared space of consciousness in ways that extend far beyond your personal sphere. This recognition naturally cultivates what Buddhists call bodhisattva consciousness, the understanding that your awakening is inseparable from the awakening of all beings, not from guilt or obligation, but from the direct recognition that there are no separate beings to awaken. There's only consciousness awakening to its own nature through every apparent individual. This shift from personal liberation to universal compassion marks the maturation of spiritual understanding. The initial recognition of your essential nature might feel like a personal achievement, but deeper investigation reveals that there was no person to achieve anything. There's only consciousness recognizing itself through the temporary lens of your perspective. When this recognition stabilizes, the spiritual path stops being about personal evolution and becomes about service to the evolution of consciousness itself. Your individual awakening becomes a gift you offer to the collective awakening that's already underway, whether recognized or not. But service doesn't necessarily mean becoming a teacher, healer, or activist, though it might. For some, service expresses as raising children with conscious awareness. For others, it's bringing presence to their work environment. For still others, it's simply being a stabilizing influence in their community through the quality of their presence. The form of service that emerges through you will be as unique as your fingerprint, because consciousness has infinite ways of expressing its recognition of itself. The key is allowing this expression to unfold naturally, rather than forcing it into preconceived ideas about what spiritual service should look like. Dr. Abraham Maslow's research on self-actualization shows that the most fulfilled individuals are those whose personal growth becomes a vehicle for contributing something meaningful to the world. But what he discovered at the end of his career was that self-actualization itself wasn't the final stage. There was another level he called self-transcendence, where the boundaries of self dissolve into service to something greater than individual fulfillment. This self-transcendence isn't a developmental achievement, but a recognition of what was always true. You are already an expression of something infinitely greater than the individual story you've been telling yourself. The quantum password doesn't make you special. It reveals that what you truly are was never separate from the source of everything. When this recognition becomes lived reality rather than intellectual understanding, life reorganizes itself around expressions of love, creativity, and wisdom. Not because you're trying to be loving, creative, or wise, but because these are the natural qualities of consciousness when it's not filtered through the limitations of separate selfhood. Your work becomes worship because you recognize it as consciousness exploring its own creative potential through the instrument of your skills and interests. Your relationships become opportunities for mutual recognition because you see through the personality differences to the shared essence that animates every apparent being. Your daily activities become meditation because you remain aware of the awareness in which all activities appear. Washing dishes becomes as sacred as sitting in formal meditation because you recognize the same presence in both. Walking to the mailbox becomes as profound as any spiritual retreat because you're awake to the miracle of conscious experience that's always available. This ordinariness of awakening can be disappointing to the part of the mind that expected enlightenment to be more dramatic. But the disappointment itself reveals another layer of seeking that can now be dissolved. The expectation that awakening should be extraordinary was just another way the ego tried to make itself special. True awakening is so ordinary that it's easy to overlook. It's the simple recognition of what's most intimate and obvious, the fact that you are aware right now. This awareness isn't produced by your brain, earned through practice, or dependent on circumstances. It's what you are before any identity forms and what remains when all identities dissolve. Rest in that recognition for a moment. Notice how natural it feels to simply be aware without needing to be aware of anything in particular. This ease of being is always available, regardless of what's happening in your experience, because it's prior to and more fundamental than any particular experience. The quantum password isn't something you use occasionally during meditation or moments of inspiration. It's what you are continuously, whether you recognize it or not. The only question is whether you'll continue to overlook the obvious in favor of seeking something more exotic, or whether you'll settle into the profound simplicity of being what you already are. This settling happens gradually as you repeatedly return attention to awareness itself whenever you notice you've become lost in the content of experience. Like learning any new skill, it requires patience and gentle persistence. But unlike other skills, you're not learning to do something new. You're learning to stop doing something unnecessary. You're learning to stop trying to be other than what you are. You're learning to stop seeking what you already possess. You're learning to stop going somewhere you never left. The quantum password reveals itself as you stop trying to access it and recognize you're already using it to have every experience you've ever had. The recognition is always present, but the mind creates elaborate stories about why it's not available right now. I'm too stressed, or I need more practice, or maybe after I resolve this situation. These delays are just consciousness playing hide and seek with itself, pretending to lose what can never be lost. Watch how this game operates in your own experience. Notice the subtle ways the mind convinces you that awakening is somewhere else, sometime else, someone else. The password becomes hidden, not through any external circumstance, but through the simple act of looking for it as if it were an object to be found, rather than the subject that's already finding everything. Dr. Douglas Harding's experiments in first-person science demonstrate this elegantly. When you point at your own face, what do you actually see? Not a head or face, but the very awareness that's looking. When you try to locate yourself as an object in space, you discover yourself as the space in which all objects appear. This isn't a philosophical position, but an experiment you can conduct right now. Point at yourself and notice what you're actually pointing at. Look for your own face and see what's actually here where you are. Search for the boundary between inner and outer experience and discover the seamless field of knowing in which both appear. The results of this investigation are always the same. What you took to be your separate self dissolves into the recognition of boundless awareness. The quantum password wasn't hiding. You were looking right through it while searching for something else. This dissolution can feel disorienting at first, because the mind has invested decades in maintaining the story of separate selfhood. But the disorientation is temporary. What emerges on the other side is a stability that doesn't depend on maintaining any particular identity or defending any particular position. You discover you can be anyone or no one, depending on what the situation requires. The businessman during a meeting, the parent during family time, the friend during social gatherings, but never mistaking any of these roles for what you fundamentally are. They become like clothing you put on and take off as needed, while remaining aware of the one who wears all costumes, but is defined by none. This flexibility revolutionizes your relationship to conflict because there's no fixed identity to defend. When someone criticizes you, you can hear the feedback without the internal warfare that usually accompanies challenges to self-image. When someone praises you, you can appreciate the kindness without inflating into pride or deflating when the praise stops coming. But this doesn't mean you become indifferent to others' responses. Quite the opposite. When you're not defending a separate self, you become exquisitely sensitive to what's actually being communicated beneath the surface of words. You can hear the pain underneath anger, the fear underneath criticism, the love that's trying to express itself through awkward attempts at connection. Dr. Carl Jung's research on the collective unconscious revealed that beneath our individual psychological patterns lie universal themes that appear across all cultures and time periods. What he discovered through decades of analytical work, you can recognize directly through the quantum password. Individual consciousness is a localized expression of universal consciousness, complete with access to the wisdom that's been accumulating throughout human history. This isn't past life regression or channeling ancient spirits. It's the simple recognition that the awareness you are isn't limited by the biographical details you've accumulated. The same consciousness that animated the Buddha, Jesus, Rumi, and every other being who recognized their true nature is the consciousness that's aware of these words right now. You don't have to become someone else to access this wisdom. You have to stop pretending to be someone else. The quantum password reveals that what every awakened being throughout history recognized was the same essential nature that you've always been, but somehow convinced yourself you weren't. This recognition carries profound implications for how you relate to death. When you realize that what you truly are has never been born, the fear of ceasing to exist begins to dissolve, not through belief in personal survival, but through the direct recognition that you are the deathless awareness in which the entire story of birth and death appears. Bodies are born and die. Personalities develop and dissolve. Memories form and fade. But the awareness that witnesses all of these changes remains untouched by any of them. It's like the movie screen that remains unaffected whether the film being projected shows birth or death, comedy or tragedy, beginning or ending. Dr. Pim van Lommel's research on near-death experiences reveals that consciousness can remain coherent and aware even when brain function ceases entirely. Patients describe experiences of expanded awareness, profound peace, and recognition of their essential nature during periods when their brains showed no measurable activity. But you don't need to have a near-death experience to recognize what these individuals discovered. The same deathless awareness they encountered is present right now as the space in which your current experience is appearing. The same peace they describe is available whenever you stop struggling with what is and rest as what you are. This peace isn't the opposite of conflict, but the context in which all conflicts appear and resolve. It's not the absence of activity, but the stillness that remains present during all activity. It's not a state you enter, but the stateless state you never leave. Notice this stillness right now. Beneath the movement of thoughts, there's stillness. Beneath the flow of emotions, there's stillness. Beneath the sensations of breathing and heartbeat, there's the unchanging stillness that makes all movement possible. This isn't the stillness of a frozen pond, but the dynamic stillness of space itself, completely empty yet allowing for infinite activity. Your essential nature is like this space, utterly empty of anything you can grasp or define, yet pregnant with the potential for every possible experience. When you rest as this space rather than as the objects moving through it, something remarkable happens to your relationship with time. The desperate urgency that characterized so much of your life begins to dissolve. You stop racing toward an imagined future where you'll finally be happy, and stop running from a constructed past that you think defines you. What remains is presence, not as a psychological state, but as what you are. This presence is always now, because now is the only time that consciousness exists. Past and future are mental constructs appearing in present awareness. The quantum password reveals that you never actually left the eternal now, because there's nowhere else to go. This doesn't mean you stop planning for the future or learning from the past, but these activities happen within the context of present awareness rather than as escapes from it. Planning becomes an expression of creativity rather than anxiety. Memory becomes a resource for wisdom rather than a source of suffering. Dr. John Kabat-Zinn's research on mindfulness-based stress reduction shows that when attention stabilizes in present moment awareness, the body's stress response calms dramatically. But what he measured scientifically, contemplatives have known experientially. Presence isn't just psychologically beneficial. It's what you most fundamentally are. The benefits of presence aren't the reason to be present. You are presence, appearing as the capacity for every experience you've ever had. The quantum password doesn't give you access to presence. It reveals that presence is what's having access to everything else, including the illusion that presence was ever absent. This revelation transforms your entire relationship to spiritual practice. Meditation stops being about achieving a particular state and becomes a celebration of the awareness that's always already present. Prayer ceases to be petitioning an external deity and reveals itself as consciousness communing with itself. Reading spiritual texts becomes less about acquiring new information and more about recognizing truth that resonates with what you've always known but perhaps never articulated. The words of awakened beings throughout history start to feel like reminders rather than revelations, confirmations rather than teachings. You begin to understand why so many traditions emphasize that what you're seeking is what you already are. The Zen masters who insisted you are perfect as you are weren't offering consolation prizes. They were pointing to the recognition that eliminates seeking altogether. But this recognition can be threatening to the identity structures you've spent decades building. Who will you be if you're not someone trying to improve, achieve, or become something? What will motivate you if you're not driven by the sense that something essential is missing? These concerns arise from the ego's attempt to co-opt even its own dissolution. The ego can't imagine existence without ego because imagination itself is one of its functions. But you are not the ego's imagination about you. You are the awareness in which the ego's imagination appears, along with its concerns about what will happen when the imagination stops. What actually happens is simpler than the ego can conceive. You continue being what you've always been, but without the exhausting effort of trying to be something else. Energy that was bound up in self-improvement, self-protection, and self-promotion becomes available for creative expression, compassionate service, and spontaneous joy. This joy isn't happiness dependent on circumstances, but the natural radiance of consciousness celebrating its own existence. It bubbles up from nowhere for no reason, like a spring that never runs dry because it's connected to an infinite source. Children express this causeless joy naturally until they're taught that happiness requires reasons. Watch a toddler discover their own reflection in a puddle, or become fascinated by the patterns sunlight makes on a wall. They're demonstrating the wonder that's available when you're not filtering experience through the agenda of getting somewhere else. The quantum password returns you to this natural state of wonder, not through regression to childishness, but through recognition of the childlike essence that was never actually lost beneath all your adult sophistication. The capacity for awe, curiosity, and delight that characterized your early years was never dependent on external circumstances, but on the pure receptivity of open awareness. This receptivity becomes available again when you stop trying to control your experience and start allowing it. The difference is subtle but revolutionary. Instead of life happening to you, life happens as you. Instead of consciousness being something you have, consciousness is what you are. Dr. Rupert Spira's teaching on the direct path emphasizes this shift from having experiences to being experience itself. What seemed to be an objective world experienced by a subjective observer reveals itself as modifications of the one consciousness that you are, appearing as both subject and object while never actually dividing itself. This recognition doesn't eliminate the practical necessity of navigating apparent duality. You still need to look both ways before crossing the street, but it transforms how you hold the entire experience. You participate fully in the dream of separation while remaining aware that it's a dream. This awareness brings tremendous freedom because you can engage completely with life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. You can feel deeply without drowning. You can care passionately without attachment. You can act decisively without anxiety about outcomes. The actions that arise from this place have a quality that's unmistakably different from ego-driven behavior. They emerge spontaneously from the intelligence of the situation rather than from personal agendas. They serve the harmony of the whole rather than the preferences of the part. Others can sense this quality even when they can't articulate what's different. Conversations flow more naturally. conflicts resolve more easily. Creative solutions appear where there seem to be only problems. Your very presence becomes an invitation for others to remember their own essential nature. But this influence happens without intention or effort. The quantum password doesn't make you into someone who influences others. It reveals that influence is the natural result of being authentically yourself, rather than performing a version of yourself designed to create particular impressions. This authenticity can be unsettling to people who are accustomed to social masks and strategic communication. When you're present without agenda, others sometimes feel exposed or uncomfortable. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility to fix, but it can trigger the temptation to retreat back into familiar patterns of people-pleasing. The key is maintaining the recognition of what you are, regardless of others' responses to your authenticity. Some people will be drawn to your presence, others will be threatened by it. Both responses arise within the same field of consciousness and are equally valid expressions of where individuals are in their own journey of recognition. Dr. David Hawkins' research on consciousness calibration suggests that different levels of awareness create corresponding energy fields that either attract or repel others, depending on their own calibration. What this points to practically is that as you stabilize in the recognition of your true nature, your relationships will naturally reorganize around this new foundation. Some connections will deepen as mutual recognition becomes possible. Others will fade as the basis for relationship, shared unconscious patterns or mutual seeking, no longer applies. New relationships will form with others who are also stabilizing in this recognition. This reorganization can be disorienting because it challenges your assumptions about why relationships exist and what they're for. When you're no longer seeking completion through others, relationship becomes an opportunity for consciousness to celebrate itself through apparent multiplicity rather than an attempt to fill internal emptiness through external connection. The love that emerges from this recognition is qualitatively different from romantic attachment or even deep affection. It's the love that consciousness has for all its expressions, unconditional, non-possessive, and completely present without needing anything in return. This love includes but transcends personal preferences. You can love someone deeply while recognizing that spending time with them isn't what serves the highest good for either of you. You can appreciate someone's essential nature while acknowledging that their current expression is unconscious or even harmful. The discernment that develops from this place isn't judgmental, but practical. You can see clearly what supports awakening and what reinforces unconsciousness, both in yourself and others, without making anyone wrong for where they are in the process. This clarity extends beyond relationships into every aspect of life. Career decisions become simpler because you're no longer trying to balance ego desires with spiritual ideals. You're available for whatever wants to emerge through you in service of the whole. Financial choices become more aligned because you're not driven by unconscious patterns of scarcity or abundance, but by practical wisdom. Health decisions become obvious because you're intimately connected to your body's natural intelligence rather than overriding it with mental concepts about what should be healthy. The body knows what it needs when you're not interfering with signals through unconscious beliefs or emotional patterns. Dr. Candace Pert's research on neuropeptides reveals that every cell in your body is constantly communicating with every other cell through chemical messengers. What she discovered scientifically mirrors what you can recognize directly. Your body is a unified field of intelligence that's constantly self-regulating when it's not disrupted by mental interference. The quantum password aligns you with this natural intelligence, not just in your body, but in every aspect of your existence. Life begins to flow with an effortlessness that would have seemed impossible when you were trying to manage everything through mental effort and willpower. This doesn't mean challenges disappear or that everything unfolds according to your preferences. It means your relationship to challenges transforms. Instead of obstacles to overcome, they become opportunities for consciousness to discover its own creative potential through the unique circumstances of your life. Each difficulty becomes an invitation to deepen in the recognition of what you are. Each moment of suffering becomes a pointer to where identification with what you're not is still active. Each experience of joy becomes a celebration of the recognition that's always available beneath any particular content. The spiritual path reveals itself not as a journey towards some future attainment, but as the progressive recognition of what's eternally present. You don't become enlightened. Enlightenment reveals itself as what you've always been, but somehow overlooked while searching for it elsewhere. This recognition is simultaneously the most significant thing that can happen and completely insignificant. It changes everything while changing nothing at all. It's the end of seeking and the beginning of serving. It's the death of the seeker and the birth of service. But service doesn't mean becoming a teacher or healer unless that's what authentically wants to emerge through you. For many, service expresses as bringing consciousness to whatever activities they're already engaged in. The accountant who serves awakening through impeccable attention to detail. The parent who serves through present moment availability to their children. The artist who serves through allowing creativity to flow without personal interference. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the recognition that your individual existence isn't separate from universal existence. Your personal awakening isn't separate from collective awakening. Your recognition of what you are isn't separate from consciousness recognizing itself through every apparent being. This recognition naturally generates what Buddhists call bodhicitta, the spontaneous wish for all beings to be free from suffering and to recognize their true nature. But this wish doesn't arise from guilt about your own awakening or obligation to save others. It emerges from the simple recognition that there are no others to save because there's only consciousness appearing as apparent multiplicity. When this understanding stabilizes, the question isn't whether to serve, but how consciousness wants to express its recognition through the unique instrument of your body-mind. Some expressions will be visible and public. Others will be invisible and private. All are equally valid contributions to the awakening that's already underway, whether recognized or not. The contribution you make simply by stabilizing in this recognition is immeasurable. Every moment you rest as awareness, rather than as the content of awareness, creates a field effect that makes this recognition more accessible to others. Every time you choose love over fear, presence over reactivity, truth over conditioning, you're strengthening the morphic field of awakened consciousness. Dr. Sheldrake's research suggests that when enough individuals embody a new pattern of consciousness, it reaches a tipping point where the pattern becomes available to the entire species. What feels like your private spiritual realization is actually participation in a collective evolution that's been building momentum for centuries. The mystics, sages, and awakened beings throughout history weren't anomalies, but pioneers establishing the neural pathways in collective consciousness that are now becoming highways. What required years of intense practice for previous generations is becoming accessible through shorter, more direct methods because the field of consciousness itself has evolved. You are both beneficiary and contributor to this evolution. The recognition available to you now builds on the recognition of everyone who came before you and creates the foundation for everyone who comes after you. The quantum password isn't your personal possession, but consciousness itself, awakening through the temporary lens of your perspective. This perspective is precious precisely because it's temporary. The unique way that consciousness appears as your particular configuration of genetics, conditioning, and circumstances will never happen again in exactly the same way. The recognition you embody through this unique lens is your irreplaceable gift to the awakening whole. But the gift isn't something you give. It's what you are, simply by being authentic, by being present, by being what you truly are without pretense or performance. You become a reminder to others of what they truly are. Not through teaching or preaching, but through the natural transmission that happens when consciousness recognizes itself. This transmission is happening right now as you rest in the recognition of what you are. The awareness that's conscious of these words is the same awareness that's conscious in every being, though it appears to be individuated. The peace that becomes available when you stop arguing with reality is the same peace that's available to everyone when they stop arguing with reality. The love that you are when you're not defending a separate identity is the love that everyone is when they're not defending their separate identities. The quantum password isn't your private access code. It's the universal recognition that dissolves the barriers between self and other, individual and collective, personal and cosmic. Take a moment to feel this unity right now. Notice that the awareness reading these words and the awareness that seems to be writing them are not two awarenesses looking at each other, but one awareness appearing as apparent dialogue with itself. There's no reader and no writer, no teacher and no student, no one seeking and no one attaining. There's only consciousness playing all the roles in its own cosmic drama, temporarily forgetting its unity in order to experience the joy of remembering it again. This remembering is happening now, not as a future achievement, but as present recognition, not as personal enlightenment, but as the light of consciousness recognizing its own luminous nature through every apparent perspective. The quantum password was never hidden from you because there was never a you separate from it to hide it from. You are the password. You have always been the password. You will always be the password. What you've been seeking has been seeking through you. What you've been trying to remember has been remembering through you. What you've been attempting to become has been being through you all along. The search is over, not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized you were never separate from it. The password is activated not through effort, but through the relaxation of effort. The recognition is complete not because something has been achieved, but because nothing needed to be achieved. You are awake. You have always been awake. You could never have been otherwise because what you are is awakeness itself. Rest in this recognition, not as something you've attained, but as what you are. Not as a temporary experience, but as your permanent nature. Not as personal enlightenment, but as the enlightenment that is personalizing itself as you. The quantum password encoded in your DNA, woven into the fabric of your being, pulsing through your awareness in every moment, is simply this. You are consciousness itself, appearing as the unique and precious perspective through which the universe is knowing and celebrating itself right now. This is the end of seeking and the beginning of being. This is the completion of the journey and the recognition that you never left home. This is the ultimate password that was never encrypted because it was always displaying itself as the clear light of your own awareness. Welcome home to what you are. Welcome home to what you've always been. Welcome home to the recognition that home was never anywhere else but here. Never anyone else but now. Never anyone else but you. The quantum password is activated. The recognition is complete. The awakening that you are is awakening through you as you. And in this awakening, all questions dissolve into the answer that you are.